Everybody, I'm David with Bolivar Live, and we've got a little different show this morning. I'm here with Chandra, and we do this show every week where we talk about insurance or we're going on TWIA, but now we're getting away. We're starting to get into building and stuff. And whenever we were talking before we came on, she said, David, I saw a little X out in the Gulf this week, and it dissipated. And I had a customer send me a photo of a bulkhead that failed, but we had designed the slab and we had put subpiles in. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Chandra, looking at this picture, you said this is an A zone.
Correct.
And so it can be built on the ground.
That's correct.
But y'all also looked at the surroundings, the possibilities of what could happen in this location. And when you design this, you put it in with subpiles, meaning it's like our houses down here on Bolivar.
Correct.
If the dirt's not there, it's still going to support it. Now, the bulkhead failed, and probably if those subpiles wouldn't have been there, it would have washed away more because the weight of the house would have been on the dirt pushing it out. But the way it sets right now with the subpiles, and you can see we think that was a tie back for the bulkhead, the short one, but then you can see one right there under the edge of the house, one of them, and that's supporting the house. Let's talk a little bit about your theory behind this and why you did this on this house and what it saved.
Sure. I mean, this is a really good example. First of all, this house is pretty heavy because it's a concrete house, right? It's a CMU house with a concrete slab. So it's a pretty heavy house to start with. So we're going to have to, support it somehow a little differently because the soil can't handle it by itself. It doesn't have quite enough capacity. So we were already had to put something, at least in targeted locations where we had concentrated loads to be able to take just some of the weight of the house load. But when you start looking at other conditions like this one has experienced, it's an A zone, and typically our A zone houses we design with subpiles, even if they're just some perimeter subpiles, because we know that even though it's technically not a V zone where you're going to get the velocity and the scour and all those design conditions. Look at Bolivar. You've got that little canal that runs down Crystal Beach, and on one side's a V zone, and on the other side's an A zone. Well, the waves don't know to stop at the canal. I mean, they just don't. So we have to look at
I've never figured out how they come up with this stuff.
I have no idea.
Property can be Cobra, and your insurance is 3 times the guy next door or down the road that may be lower in elevation, but he's not
exactly. I don't know I don't know who figured all that out.
It's crazy.
There's not a lot of logic, or at least not to my understanding.
I don't know the theory they used. It must have been something way before my time.
Yeah.
But
yeah, something like this is really, it's when you put subpiles in, first of all, it takes that load of the house and it spreads it out, pretty much everybody that we've done subpiles for, and they go, oh, there's so many subpiles and blah, blah, blah. When I hear back from them and they go, oh my gosh, we had a storm, we had a bulkhead fail, we had, high wave action that undermined, under the slab and washed all my landscaping out and got under my house. When we hear all those things and we say, and my house is fine because it had proper support, and all we have to do now is go back and backfill it all, pack it in, and then put all that back. That's when you feel really good about what you've done, because, this house was a multi-million-dollar house, and it could have failed right here, halfway during construction. And instead they're fixing the bulkhead and moving on. So it could have been a lot worse. And I think that some of these design, these non-required designs that we're doing, because like I said, A-Zone doesn't require subpiles. I think those things are the things that come with experience. And when you really understand, where am I building? What's a historical, seasonality of wet and dry and storm and wave action and all those things. When you have that experience, then you understand the things that could affect the design, and you put these little extra things in there that maybe doesn't make sense when you're having to write that check to put it in, but it makes a lot of sense whenever you're living in that house and when you don't have performance issues at that house and you see problems like this crop up and you don't have to experience the full magnitude of what this could have meant if we did not have subpiles.
Well, and you and I talked about it. I've seen it down here on Bolivar a lot, especially on some of the older bulkheads. Maybe they didn't pour the sidewalk or the concrete past it. They poured it up to it, and water goes down over that sidewalk and then goes behind the bulkhead and starts washing it out. And before you know it, you've got a bulkhead that's either sinking away and it holds more water, or it's uneven, and at the joints you see different layers, and then you have to come in and either jack that up and foam under it or do something to level it back out so you can walk on it, and not trip or anything. And with this, it slowed them down a little bit because the bulkhead failed, but the house didn't fail. Now, when these are wood pilings, and you and I talked about this a little bit, they're marine grade, so they're made to be in the ground. But just looking at the picture, it looks like it just is sort of like a prop there. But this is actually tied in to the slab and the rebar and everything, right?
Yeah, that's right. So usually on the top of these subpiles, we'll dowel in a rebar at the top, about 6 inches from the top of that pile, and we'll embed that up into the grade beam so that it really locks into that whole rebar system of that grade beam, and we've got it really locked into that system. So it will take that load out of the grade beam and transfer it down into that subpile into the ground. So that's a way to really lock it in to make sure that you don't have movement. The other thing is that we can get those subpiles down far enough where the house doesn't experience, we're going to go through seasons of wet, dry. Right. A lot of the soils outside of Bolivar have clay in them, and you get some expansiveness, and it's trying to push, on grade beams, or it's going to shrink away from them whenever it dries out. So you're going to get this shrink swell situation. But if you've got that subpile down where it's in a stable zone, it's called the passive zone, and you're not in that active zone of wet dry, which is that top maybe 6-8 feet of the soil, you're going to be in a stable part of the soil where it's locked in. It can get wet, it can get dry, it's not going anywhere, so.
And down here, we've got a lot of sand, and anything over 3 foot down is a water level down here. If you dig down 3 foot, you're going to hit water. Now, as the tide in the wintertime, when the tide goes out, our groundwater drops, and it may be 5 foot or 6 foot. But
that's one of the nice things about doing the wood subpiles. It doesn't matter where the water level is.
Right.
If the water level's at 3 feet, the water level's at 8 feet. If you go down 10, 12 feet with those subpiles, maybe 14, depending on the weight of everything. If you get down past, that active zone and into the solid wet zone, I guess, where you're not going to have variations, you're not going anywhere. That's stable. It's locked in, and you don't have to worry about the hole filling up with water, pumping anything out to pour, like a footing or something, like a bell footing. So it's a really good option.
And this is all part of the engineering. So if you put subpiles in like this, can you take away maybe from a beam or something since you have that support, or is it just added support to an already engineered slab? Would the slab?
It's really an added support. So what happens is that we will space those out. So we're looking at that grade beam, like if there was no soil underneath this, can this span and hold itself?
And that's the way it's designed.
Yes.
So theoretically, they could come in, a storm came in and washed all the dirt out from underneath that house.
Yeah.
Other than an airspace there now, the house should be supported.
Right. We should
Okay.
be fine. Yeah, we try not to overspan. The slabs can span a certain distance the way they're reinforced. We can usually get 8 or 9 feet slab span. So as long as we've got everything laid out to where, and really it's an economy thing. Some clients are like, I don't want you to accommodate for that. And I don't have to. I mean, um, that's not a requirement. That's not a code requirement. I mean, I'm only required to design to the minimum code standard, which the minimum is the minimum for a reason, right? I mean, but a house like this where they're spending a little bit extra money, they're putting a little bit extra time into it. They've thought through, how they want to build it. They don't mind putting those little bit of extra safeguards in there to know that they're going to have good performance no matter what happens to this house.
Well, and right here shows that what would it have cost them, and I don't know if insurance would have covered it or not, but what would it have cost them if they didn't have this?
If they lost
if they lost the
house?
corner of the house, and it might have just been the corner, but it's still a deviation in their plans, and they're going to have to rebuild and do some re-engineering. And so a little extra cost to save them. And that's sort of like you and I were talking, my radiator blew up on the Bolivar live truck, and someone said, man, why does it cost so much? Well, I'm using OEM parts because it's got a 2-year warranty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could probably do it for half the price with just an aftermarket part.
Right.
But I want security, know? And so, going the extra mile sometimes is a necessity, especially down here on the coast. Because
I think you're going to pay one way or the other. You either pay now or you pay later, and I'd rather pay now and not have these problems down the road,
Would this do anything with insurance as far as being able to cut costs, or would it raise costs or anything?
Probably not. It probably won't do anything to provide any discounts or anything like that. I say that, but this house is actually being designed to the fortified criteria.
Is it?
And yes, and we actually got their insurance quote this week. And this is an almost $2 million house. And I want to say the insurance for the whole thing, including wind and everything, was about $5,000 a year.
Man.
So it's
I would have seen that.
It's a Cadillac policy too. Yeah. It's got all the bells and whistles, all the riders, all the things. It's because it's fortified, and that makes a huge difference in the cost of everything. So
great. Well, if people want to get some more information on, real quick, y'all don't do commercial bulkhead, but you do design residential bulkhead. So if someone's on a canal in Kemah, Clear Lake, Galveston, or down here, you can design their bulkhead too.
Absolutely.
Great.
And the big thing, like we talked about, it's the transition. It's the transition from your bulkhead to your neighbor's bulkhead, because that transition is where water's going to try to get through and get behind both of them and cause undermining on both sides. And that's probably the sidewalk problem that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So we definitely need, where those two things tie together, it makes a huge difference as how watertight that is to prevent undermining behind the bulkheads. And that's where you don't usually see a bulkhead issue right smack in the middle. You see the bulkhead issue at the edges.
Right.
That's where it starts anyway.
Great. Well, for more information on bulkheads, home designs, or if you have a question about your house, what could you do after the fact, make sure you get hold of Aran and Franklin. They're local here. They're in, I think, Beaumont, Louisiana, Mississippi. I don't think anything along the
wherever you need us, just let us know. We'll either, if we're not there, we probably can get there. So
yeah. Also, you can contact them through their website and use their information button there. That way they can track it and you can keep track of everything. So, Chandra, thanks for joining us today. Until next time, I'm David with Bolivar Live. Y'all have a great day, great week. Come see us. God bless, and bye-bye. Video equipment is sponsored by Crystal Beach Decor and More, located at 1959 Highway 87 in Crystal Beach, Texas, and Beachy Beatnik Boutique and Jewelry, located at 970 Surfside and Highway 87 in Crystal Beach, Texas. Thank you to these two businesses for being our 2025 video equipment sponsor for Bolivar Live.